What's up, everybody? Welcome into another episode of Bulls Latest. Your host, Matt Johnson here. Going to kick off today's show previewing the Bulls matchup here against the Cavaliers. They will host them tonight, 7 p.m. Central, live on CHSN at the United Center. Only one of two games on the NBA slate tonight as a whole, so they will be cued in. The NBA world will be cued in on this one. Look for the Bulls to come out hot in this contest following yet another disappointing home loss Sunday night to the lowly Pelicans. I expect Io to be down for this one again. Other than that, the Bulls should be relatively healthy heading into this contest, so that's a positive for them. Kind of looking at a betting preview here of this contest, the Cavs come in, and it's not surprising that the line is where it is, but the Cavs come in this one as a road favorite of 4.5. So the Bulls are getting 4.5 at home against Cleveland here. Not a surprising line. Cleveland is clearly the better team, no matter how you break down this matchup from any which angle. I just think that the Bulls have not given odds makers any reason to respect them, though. Through their early part of the season and kind of how they've played recently, and they've really struggled no matter what the opponent or who the opponent is and where they're playing. They've dropped numerous games where on paper they were the favorite, whether it was short or longer favorite. The Bulls just cannot seem to get that job done. So not surprising that the line is where it is. The total sitting at 241.5 here. No surprise. I expect points to go up at a good clip here. I think if the Bulls can carry their end of the offensive output, I think this should go over. As far as the money line goes, you got the Bulls the Cavs at minus 185 on the money line. You can get the Bulls at plus 154 here. If I was to play this game, I would definitely go Cavs money line. Now you pay a little bit of juice on that at minus 185, but the fact you can get that Cleveland team at under minus 200 odds against a Bulls team that you really just can't trust to this point with how they've been playing recently, I'd go Cavs money line if I were you guys. This is a team who's going to come in pissed off. They just dropped that game in OT to Charlotte last time out, so it's a prideful group, this Cleveland Cavalier group. They expect to contend in an Eastern Conference this year that's wide open. So at just 15-12 to start this season, they're looking to get their feet under them. I think this is a good spot for Cleveland. I know I don't want to bet against the Bulls. It's not fun to have to fade the Chicago Bulls. That's my team. That's why we're all here. I just think that it's a good spot for Cleveland. Now, I know the Bulls should be equally as fiery, losing at home Sunday night to a 5-win New Orleans team who's now beaten Chicago twice in 2 tries. However, the Bulls have just not shown any ability to bounce back this year after any bad losses, which is why I feel confident in taking Cleveland here. The Bulls' ability to kind of jump back after a loss, with the exception of that win in Denver early on in the season, that was really the win of the year for the Bulls to this point. Going into that one into Denver as like a 14.5-point dog. If you guys remember, they went and won that ball game in a crazy one down the stretch. So other than that, though, the Bulls really have not done well in terms of facing adversity and coming out and winning a ball game to kind of push past that adversity. So I expect that to continue tonight. For a play on the total, I'd go over 241.5. Both teams can score the ball. And assuming the Bulls do show up, again, this thing should go over the total, like I was saying. So kind of jumping into another portion of things here, I wanted to jump back into trade targets for this Bulls team. And now it's going to get interesting, especially with the way things are unfolding for this Bulls team so far this season. As talks continue to swirl, and they're going to pick up now. It's going to continue for weeks until we get through that February trade deadline. So you're going to see things really kickstart here in terms of trade talks and who could be going where, who could be on the move. And then night in, night out, the fate of these teams really will decide whether teams will be active in moving guys. And the Bulls continuing to drop games is only going to make it more likely, with so many guys unsigned past this season, that the Bulls it's going to be more likely they're going to want to move these guys. So let's look at a list of guys that fit the bill for the Bulls in terms of movability. Upcoming free agents following this year for Chicago. Leading the list, obviously, is Vooch. He's on a $21.5 million contract this year. Unrestricted free agent in 2026. You have Zach Collins, who's on an $18.5 million contract this year, unrestricted free agent 2026. Hard to believe Zach Collins is making that kind of money. So he more than likely will be on the move. I don't see him wanting to take a discount. I know he had the injury to start this season, but that'll be a tricky situation there for the Bulls. Although he's been very, very good for them in return for that Zach LaVine deal. I don't know if he's going to be back. Same goes with Kevin Huerter, also playing on an $18 million deal this year. He's an unrestricted free agent in 2026. Kevin Huerter is an interesting one. Between him and Zach Collins, it will be worth noting what the Bulls decide to do with those two guys. I know Billy Donovan and that front office really, really like those two players. In particular, Kevin Huerter, I think, has a decent shot to hang around. We'll see what happens, though. I can only imagine there's going to be a contender out there that's going to be looking at both of those players in terms of adding them and paying the price to do so. So that'll be worth watching. Coby White, much like Vooch, I do expect him, unfortunately, and I know Bulls fans love Coby White. I do as well, playing on that $12.9 million deal this year. Unrestricted free agent 2026. I find it very hard to believe the Bulls are going to pay him the type of money he's going to warrant to keep him around, especially with how this season has gone thus far. I think Coby White could be looking at a fresh start somewhere else. We'll see, though, because I think that Arturas Karnisovas, Mark Eversley, and Billy Donovan view that pairing of Coby White and Josh Giddey as a lethal one. So if they really want to go all in on Coby White, you can expect Collins and Huerter to go. And then same with Coby White in terms of Ayo. Ayo playing on that $7.5 million deal this year, unrestricted free agent in 2026. If the Bulls lock up Coby White, expect Ayo to go. And the other flip side to that, if Coby White does move on, expect the Bulls to kind of try to articulate a deal to keep Ayo Dosunmu in Chicago. And I talked about this a long while back, if you guys remember, expect one of those two guys to have a decent shot to stay in Chicago between Ayo and Coby. I think that they will get a deal done for one or the other, depending on which one goes and which one has a suitor potentially as early as this coming trade deadline. So that'll be certainly worth watching. There's a lot to watch for with this Bulls team when it comes to these trade targets. And then the guys that I don't necessarily expect to be a part of this team, although he's been a huge veteran presence to this point, has really picked up some valuable minutes for a team that's really needed it and has really been decimated by injuries in a lot of parts during the season. Jevon Carter, making $6.8 million this year. He's an unrestricted free agent 2026. I just don't think it makes sense for the timeline of the Chicago Bulls to bring Jevon Carter back. He will find himself on another roster, though. He is a solid role player and brings that veteran presence necessary for a young ball club. I just don't expect him to be back. Dalen Terry making $5.4 million this year. He's a restricted free agent 2026, so obviously the Bulls will have the last laugh in terms of any deal that comes across for Dalen Terry. This was a guy who the Bulls drafted, had very high hopes for, and he just has not been able to get going. I talked about this a while back when he started to get good minutes. If Dalen Terry could break out this season, it could be a big opportunity for him to make his case to stay in Chicago. He just hasn't done enough. Now, I know there's a lot of basketball to be played, but the way the needle is pointing now, I don't think Dalen Terry will be back in a Bulls uniform. It just doesn't make sense on that timeline. And Julian Phillips on a $2.2 million deal this year. He has a team option for 2026. I think the Bulls will pick up that team option. We'll see, though, with it being a lighter free agent class coming up and assuming a lot of these unrestricted free agents in 2026 for the Bulls are going to be gone. They need bodies, and I think Julian Phillips coming back on that cheap team option will be a good one for Chicago. I still think Julian Phillips has a lot of potential. I'm big on that player. Getting him more minutes is the key, and maybe that's an opportunity as we move throughout the rest of the season to see him more as we move along here. So obviously, and a lot of Bulls fans know this already, but the Bulls' most sizable contracts, they start with Pat Williams making $18 million a year on that multi-year deal that he signed. That is seen by Bulls fans as a major mistake by this front office. I've gotten into that many times in this show. You guys know where I stand on that. Very frustrating. So Pat Will is on that multi-year $18 million contract. Okoro, obviously just signing the $11 million contract this past offseason. You got Jalen Smith making $9 million a year, and Trey Jones just fresh off of that $8 million a year extension, $24 million in total for 3 years. Jalen Smith, I mean, obviously, Trey Jones and the corner are going to stick around. Pat Will's an interesting one. I don't know if they're going to find a suitor for him. We'll have to find out if anyone is interested starting this trade deadline. So we'll keep an eye on that. Jalen Smith is a guy who's given the Bulls really, really good minutes, so I expect him to probably stick around. I think he will be a part of the Bulls' plans at least next season. I'm not sure long term, but that's a guy who's provided a lot of valuability. He comes of very good value to this roster at the moment. So looking at and kind of wrapping up today's show, guys, the Bulls front office has a lot of decisions to make. Obviously, all those contracts, so we'll see what's going to go on there. A big question in terms of what the Bulls are going to do between now and the trade deadline. Instead of using cap space during an average free agent class this coming summer, looking ahead, is it more logical for Chicago to identify players under contract for next season already? And that's a big question the Bulls are going to have to go through as a front office and as an organization. As discussed just now, the Bulls have 7 guys currently on expiring deals. I mean, that's a lot of expiring contracts for a team. So there's going to be decisions to be had here. If the Bulls allow those contracts to expire, they could have $70 million in money to spend this coming off season, but on an average free agent class. And it's unfortunate that with all that money to spend, the free agent class just isn't that juicy. And every year, there seems to be a group of guys who are, the home run hits in the free agent market, but that just isn't the case. I don't think it's very strong. So the Bulls would be wise to kind of look for players who are on those deals and look to get and move in that direction and identify guys under contract for next season. I think that would be a decent move for this front office in the time being. You could still have that money to spend. I just don't know if you're going to want to rush it on guys this coming off season that aren't necessarily worth that penny. So obviously, looking at the Bulls' most valuable first-round picks, they own their first-round pick from 2026 in this next coming draft all the way through 2032. That's a stretch of time. The Bulls cannot honestly say they've had their first-round pick for that long, with how messy it's been for Bulls front office in terms of the first-round pick in recent years. They're finally hanging on to that pick and have it for the next 5 to 6 years. So a lot of assets being able to be afforded for Chicago. I think that they're going to have a lot to work with in terms of the front office. A lot of questions to answer, though, in a majority. I mean, outside of Okoro, Trey Jones, and Josh Giddey, who the heck knows what this Bulls team is going to look like as early as this coming February and what guys are going to be on the move. And if they keep losing ball games, I think the decision is going to become easier for this front office. So one thing's for certain, too, it doesn't sound like with all the uncertainty lying, within the roster that Billy Donovan's job is in any jeopardy. I know that comes at the disgust of many Bulls fans. A lot of Bulls fans want to see Billy Donovan gone. In my eyes, he just doesn't have much to work with. He's been put in a very tough situation and as once viewed as one of the higher paid coaches in the NBA. And that's why Bulls fans are so frustrated with the recent deals given out to NBA head coaches in that market. Billy Donovan's no longer one of the higher paid guys. So I don't think he's going anywhere. We'll see how this roster shakes out, though. First things first, Bulls got to try and take care of business against the Cavs here in the first of 2 games against them this week. But that's going to be a tall order. I just don't know if the Bulls are going to have enough to go and win this ball game at home with the way that they looked on Sunday night. Now, maybe they could bounce back, but in bounce-back spots this year, the Bulls haven't been great. So let me know what trade targets you would like to see the Bulls kind of deal. Who do you think should go? Who do you think should stay? What do you think is worth it in terms of being a Bulls fan for who you want to see the Bulls kind of keep around and pay? I'd be interested to know your guys' takes. So anyway, thanks for joining me on another episode of Bulls Latest today, guys. We will see you guys next time.